Chapter 10, Lesson 2, Society and Culture in Ancient China. Chinese Life. As we read this section, think about the guiding question: how was early Chinese society organized? Early Chinese society was made up of 4 social classes. A social class includes people who have the same economic and social position. In ancient China, these social classes were land-owning aristocrats, farmers, artisans, and merchants. Lives of the aristocrats. China's aristocratic families were wealthy. They owned large estates and lived in tile-roofed houses with courtyards and gardens. Walls surrounded their homes as protection against bandits. Inside, fine furniture and carpets filled the rooms. Aristocratic families owned large plots of land. After the father died, a family's land was divided equally among all the male heirs. As a result, sons and grandsons owned much less land than their fathers and grandfathers owned. Lives of the farmers. 9 out of 10 Chinese farmed for a living. The farmers lived in rural villages surrounded by mud walls. Beyond the village walls were fields owned by the aristocrats. The farmers rented the fields by turning over a part of their crop to the owners. In northern China, farmers grew wheat and a grain called millet. In the south, where the climate was warmer and wetter, they grew rice. Most farmers also owned a small plot of land where they grew food for their own use. The government required farmers to pay taxes and to work 1 month each year on projects such as building roads, and in wartime, farmers were forced to serve as soldiers. In addition, farmers had to face constant threats from famine and floods. Lives of the artisans and merchants. Artisans are skilled workers who make useful objects. The artisans of Zhou, China, crafted iron tools and weapons, silk cloth, and vessels made of bronze or jade. Many were architects, artists, and woodworkers. Most artisans learned their skills from their fathers, and in turn passed them along to their sons. Shopkeepers, traders, and bankers made up the merchant class. Merchants lived in towns and provided goods and services to the aristocrats. Some merchants became wealthy, but they were not respected members of society. People believed that merchants worked only for their own gain, not for the good of society. While artisans made useful goods and farmers grew food for all, merchants made money for themselves. Merchants were also barred from government jobs. What were Chinese families like? The family was the center of early Chinese society. Farming in ancient China required many workers, so parents had many children to help them with the work. Even young children worked in the fields. Chinese families took care of those members in need, the aged, the young, and the sick. Chinese families practice filial piety. Filial refers to a son or daughter. Piety refers to duty or devotion. Therefore, filial piety refers to a person's responsibility to respect and obey their parents. It also requires people to take care of their parents as they grow older. Family members place the needs of the head of the family before their own. The head of the family was the oldest male, usually the father. Respect for the parents and the elderly were the center of the teachings of Confucius, which we're going to talk about next week, which is a religion in ancient China. Even today, filial piety is an important part of the Chinese culture. Roles of men and women. Men and women had very different roles in early China. Men were respected because of the jobs that they had: growing crops, attending school, running the government, and fighting wars. The Chinese considered these jobs more important than the work carried out by women. Most women raised children and saw to their education. They also managed the households and family finances.